What if the real battles are unfolding far from the headlines about advancing troops or receding front lines? What if the most decisive moments of war are not those captured in viral images, but those that unfold quietly in supply depots, conference rooms, and digital networks? Let's look beyond the news flashes to understand how the modern landscape of conflict is truly shaped. Each week, the world is hit with a fresh wave of reports. Russian forces pushing forward, towns falling, villages marked as captured. Official statements from both sides tally enemy casualties and lost equipment, as if the entire war could be measured by the number of square kilometers gained and the bodies counted. The focus is on the visible, the lines on the map, the numbers in the briefings, the familiar drama of advances and retreats. But beneath these figures, another, less visible conflict rages, one that's just as pivotal, if not more so. This is not simply a contest of territory. It is a shadow war, fought over supply routes, technological supremacy, and spheres of influence that stretch far beyond the immediate front lines. Every seized position is merely one piece in a sprawling, multifaceted campaign, as complex and layered as the Cold War chess games of the 20th century. If you see this war as a simple contest of maps and boundaries, you are missing the deeper game. The outcomes that will shape the future may never appear in a press release, but they are already tipping the balance of the conflict. Think back to World War II. While the world watched the advance on Stalingrad, the fate of the Eastern Front was being decided by the endless struggle for supply across the vast Russian steppe, the so-called logistics war. The same dynamic is at play today, though the tools and technologies have evolved. To truly understand who is gaining ground, we need to look past the official statements and battlefield updates. We need to unravel the deeper strategies that are reshaping this war, just as the breaking of the Enigma Code or the Berlin airlift once did in earlier eras. Let us zoom in on the ground truth, beyond the headlines and official statements. In the past 24 hours, the Russian Ministry of Defense confirmed new advances near Pokrovsk and along the Zaporizhzhia front. Villages such as Chushanina and Poltavka have changed hands. But these are merely signposts on a sprawling, shifting battlefield. The real story is not about square kilometers taken, but about relentless, grinding pressure, measured yard by yard, day by day, in a war of attrition reminiscent of Verdun or the Somme. Russian forces are leveraging a mix of mechanized, airborne, and marine units to intensify their offensive. Reports from Donetsk, Zaporizhzhia, Kharkiv, and Sumy describe Ukrainian brigades and territorial defense units absorbing heavy blows. Dozens of armored vehicles and artillery pieces have been lost. Casualties on both sides number in the hundreds with each new clash. These are not abstract figures. They represent a steady drain on Ukraine's fighting strength, cohesion, and morale. Consider the toll of World War I's endless battles. It was not just the deadliest blows, but the constant, unyielding pressure that eventually broke armies and nations. Precision strikes now define the tempo of battle. Russian units are systematically targeting brigade headquarters, logistics nodes, and troop concentrations with increasing accuracy. The strategy is coldly logical. Break the enemy's command, sever supply lines, and isolate defenders long before any ground assault begins. It is a campaign waged as much against fuel convoys and ammunition depots as against soldiers dug in at the front. In this sense, it echoes the Allied bombing of German railways during World War II, which paralyzed movement and starved armies of vital supplies. Ukrainian attempts to mount mass drone attacks are being blunted before they start. Russian reconnaissance is pinpointing staging areas, followed by fast missile strikes that dismantle drone teams in minutes. Trucks, launchers, and dozens of drones wiped out before takeoff. Electronic warfare and intelligence are tilting this cat-and-mouse contest in Moscow's favor, making it ever harder for Ukraine to land a meaningful blow. This is similar to how, during the Gulf War, American air superiority and electronic jamming rendered Iraqi command and control almost useless, leading to rapid collapse. Overlooking these granular details means missing who is actually shaping the initiative. Every destroyed supply truck, every intercepted drone operation subtly shifts the balance, weakening logistics, readiness, and the will to fight. What may seem like slow movement on the maps is, in truth, an invisible campaign eroding Ukraine's capacity to resist. It is the slow squeeze that has decided so many conflicts in the past, from the siege of Leningrad to the Battle of the Atlantic. But this is only one layer of the conflict. Beyond the smoke and chaos of daily fighting, larger forces, diplomatic, economic, and technological, are reshaping the war's trajectory. Consider how the Marshall Plan, rather than any single battle, defined the post-war order in Europe. The same may be happening now in subtler, less visible ways. The real war is not just tanks in open fields or soldiers huddled in muddy trenches. It is raging behind the scenes, across battered railways, sabotaged bridges, and the unseen webs of radio signals and encrypted code. Today's battlefields are shaped by who can keep supplies flowing, who can blind their opponent, and who strikes first, and hardest, far from the front lines. In the same way, the North Vietnamese strategy during the Vietnam War relied not on holding territory, but on wearing down American resolve through attrition and disruption. Russian forces are now methodically targeting Ukrainian logistics. Each day, precision strikes hit bridges, rail networks, and vital depots, slowly strangling the flow of ammunition, fuel, and reinforcements. This is not chaos or random destruction. Every attack is selected to sever lifelines and cripple Ukraine's ability to fight back. It is a modern echo of the Allied campaign against Nazi oil reserves, which ground German tanks to a halt in the final year of World War II. The delivery of these blows reveals the new rules of war. Drones, guided missiles, and electronic warfare blend into seamless operations. Reconnaissance units spot Ukrainian troop concentrations, relaying real-time data to missile crews, who respond with devastating precision. Meanwhile, electronic jamming blinds defenses and disrupts communications, leaving Ukrainian units isolated as the assault unfolds. This is reminiscent of Israel's lightning air campaigns, where rapid intelligence and precision strikes dismantled the enemy's fighting potential before a full-scale battle even began. Recently, Ukrainian plans for a major drone offensive were unraveled before they could be set in motion. Intelligence teams detected preparations in the Kharkiv region, tracking convoys and spotting launch sites with thermal cameras. As Ukrainian vehicles and operators gathered, missiles struck with perfect timing, destroying drones, launchers, and sidelining key personnel all at once. In a single hour, a wave of Ukrainian drones was wiped out on the ground, neutralized before they could threaten Russian positions. This mirrors the destruction of the Japanese carrier fleet at Midway. A carefully timed strike changed the entire balance of power in mere minutes. Military analysts say victories like these do more than thwart single attacks. By crippling Ukrainian logistics and drone capabilities, Russia is slowly eroding Kiev's ability to counterattack or reinforce threatened front lines. Every destroyed depot or intercepted drone tips the balance, making each Ukrainian move more costly and less likely to succeed. It is a strategy that draws on lessons from the Soviet-Afghan conflict, where supply lines determined the fate of entire offensives. At the same time, Russia's factories are now producing enough drones to launch hundreds in one night. In many raids, decoy drones lead the charge, forcing Ukraine's air defenses to waste scarce interceptors before the real strike arrives. Each night's assault becomes a test of nerves, technology, and which side can outlast the other in this supply-driven war. This tactic echoes the use of wooden decoys during World War II, which tricked enemy bombers into wasting ordnance on false targets. For those watching from a distance, the lesson is clear. Wars are now won or lost long before the shooting starts, in the silent battles for logistics, intelligence, and industrial might. Ignoring these tactics risks missing the true engine of modern conflict and misunderstanding what will decide its outcome. The fall of France in 1940 was as much about logistical paralysis as battlefield defeat. The same vulnerabilities persist today. But the struggle over supply lines and production is only part of the story. Far from the battlefield, Diplomatic pressure and shifting alliances are creating new risks and new opportunities for both sides. The outcome may not be decided in a trench or by a tank, but across negotiating tables and in the shifting allegiances of foreign capitals. What if the fate of this war is not being shaped by missiles or trenches, but by whispered promises and covert deals behind closed doors? Remember how the Yalta and Potsdam conferences redrew entire continents without a single shot fired. Similar high-stakes diplomacy may be at work now. At this moment, Russian President Vladimir Putin is reportedly proposing a dramatic bargain: peace, in exchange for Ukraine surrendering the last pockets of Donetsk still under its control. This is no mere battlefield ultimatum. It is a high-stakes diplomatic maneuver with far-reaching consequences. In the past, such offers have brought wars to abrupt halts, but they often come with hidden costs and long-term risks. Western and Ukrainian leaders are deeply divided. Some see the offer as a possible step toward peace, a vital pause that could spare countless lives. Others fear it is a cunning trap, a concession that would reward aggression and set a perilous example for conflicts yet to come. The Munich Agreement of 1938 looms large in the minds of many, a cautionary tale about the dangers of appeasement. Meanwhile, Europe is quietly feeling the squeeze. Economic pain is mounting as industries struggle with soaring energy costs, and public patience for endless support is wearing thin. Each new aid package stirs a louder question: can Europe maintain this pace, or will exhaustion and resource shortages force a change in strategy? The winter of 1973, during the oil crisis, saw similar debates in European capitals about the limits of endurance. The United States faces its own labyrinth. Behind the scenes, American officials are engaged in tense discussions, recalibrating their support and sending mixed messages. Their approach has grown more pragmatic, driven by shifting strategic interests and political pressures at home, rather than any unwavering alliance. This echoes the shifting American stance during the Vietnam War, when domestic divisions eventually shaped foreign policy. On the front lines, Ukraine's forces are buckling under relentless pressure. Losses are climbing, morale is fading, and targeted Russian strikes are crippling supply routes, bridges, and vital depots. Each destroyed link in the logistics chain makes it harder for Ukraine's defenders to regroup or mount a counteroffensive. The supply crises that doomed Napoleon's army in Russia are not just tales from the past. They remain painfully relevant today. As autumn gives way to winter, a new phase looms. The coming cold could be decisive, not just for soldiers bracing for brutal conditions, but also for leaders in European capitals and Washington, forced to confront hard choices and faltering resolve. Think of the winter sieges of Leningrad and Bastogne. Weather can be as formidable a foe as any army. Focusing only on tanks and territory risks, missing the deeper forces at play. Diplomatic undercurrents, economic tipping points, and the possibility of sudden deals or dramatic reversals that could redraw the map overnight. The Arab-Israeli conflicts were often decided not just on the battlefield, but through high-stakes negotiations and shifting alliances. What happens next may not be decided on the battlefield at all, but in the shadows where strategy, desperation, and ambition collide. In this war, the real front lines may be shifting where few are watching. The Cuban Missile Crisis showed how unseen maneuvering can decide the fate of nations without a shot fired. This new era of warfare reveals truths that extend well beyond the battlefield. Victory rarely belongs to the side with the most firepower. Instead, success comes from crippling your opponent's ability to adapt, disrupting supply routes, breaking chains of command, and sowing confusion. A single, well-placed strike against logistics can ripple through an entire operation, causing delays and collapses far from the front line. The Allied destruction of the Remagen Bridge in World War II is a classic example. A single blown crossing changed the pace of an entire campaign. Speed and intelligence are now the real weapons. The winner is often the one who can sense changes, spot weak points, and act before the enemy reacts. Numbers of soldiers or tanks matter less than the ability to gather real-time information and pivot instantly. This is why drones, hackers, and rapid response teams are as vital as any missile or cannon. The Israeli Defense Forces' rapid adaptation during the Yom Kippur War turned the tide in days, not months. Psychological warfare is a silent force that shapes outcomes. Cutting power grids, jamming communications, or unleashing waves of drone attacks can erode morale without a direct fight. Sometimes the goal is not to advance on the map, but to make your rival feel surrounded, isolated, and exhausted, forcing errors that become their undoing. The psychological impact of the Blitz on London was, in the end, more about resilience than physical destruction. These lessons do not stop at war's edge. In business, politics, or cyber arenas, crippling a competitor's options can be more decisive than a head-on clash. True victory comes from outmaneuvering, predicting moves, and staying several steps ahead. It is about closing every escape route before your rival even sees the trap. Think of how Apple's early dominance in supply chains and design patents forced competitors to play catch-up for years. Innovation is the ultimate game-changer. Using decoy drones to drain air defenses or unleashing surprise tactics can open gaps that brute force never could. Small, clever moves, when timed right, can change the course of a campaign or an entire industry. Consider how the introduction of the tank in World War I or the Blitzkrieg in World War II transformed warfare overnight. Clinging to outdated playbooks is dangerous. Modern conflict and modern life are shaped by relentless change. Failing to read these shifts, or assuming old rules still apply, leads to defeat, sometimes before the battle even begins. Kodak's failure to adapt to digital photography is a warning that applies in war as well as business. If you ignore these realities, you risk being outflanked at the moment it matters most, on the world stage, in business, or in your own decisions. History is filled with those who failed to adapt, from the Spartans at Leuctra to the Maginot Line's defenders. Understanding how victories are truly won gives you an edge, whether you are watching global events or making your own strategic choices. The next stage of the conflict will test who can adapt fastest and who gets left behind. The winners will be those who see the invisible battles, not just the ones on the evening news. The next time you see a map update or a headline about a pivotal battle, pause and ask, what is happening out of sight? In modern conflict, the surface rarely tells the whole story. While the world argues over towns gained or lost, the real contest is waged in supply routes, logistics, and the patient erosion of an enemy's resilience and will. The fall of Saigon was decided not just by final attacks, but by years of attrition and collapse behind the scenes. If we focus only on visible shifts, lines redrawn, columns advancing, we risk missing the deeper game. Russia's campaign in Ukraine is not simply about seizing territory. It is a methodical assault on logistics, morale, and the connective tissue that keeps defenses coherent. Every missile strike and act of sabotage against infrastructure fits into a broader strategy meant to grind down resistance, one day at a time. This mirrors the slow strangulation of the Confederacy during the American Civil War, where naval blockades and supply raids proved decisive. Diplomatic moves and international pressure now rival firepower in their influence. Recent negotiations and changing demands reveal that battlefield success is only one piece of the puzzle. The true outcome may depend on who best manages their resources, adapts to shifting realities, and sustains alliances, not just who wins in open combat. The creation of NATO and the Warsaw Pact show how alliances can outlast and outweigh any one battle. For those watching, from investors to leaders, analysts to ordinary citizens, the greatest risk is mistaking headlines for the whole truth. Wars today are shaped as much by information, logistics, and global partnerships as by guns or tanks. Clinging to old assumptions invites costly misjudgments in business, security, and even personal decisions. The collapse of Lehman Brothers in 2008 was a war lost not on trading floors, but in unseen networks of trust and liquidity. So the next time you scan the news, challenge yourself to look beyond the obvious. The real war is fought in decisions made far from the front page, where strategy, supply, and diplomacy quietly tip the scales. To close, let us reflect on this. History's most profound changes rarely announce themselves with fanfare. They unfold gradually, in the quiet erosion of strength, the subtle forging of alliances, and the patient application of pressure. Whether on the battlefield, in boardrooms, or in the corridors of power, the true victors are those who perceive and shape these hidden currents. In the end, the deepest battles are often those no one sees, until the world wakes up and everything has changed.